Businessman couldn't negotiate with Sheikh until the janitor appeared and worked a miracle. Arthur Sterling felt the sweat running down his forehead as he watched the Arab man get up from the brown leather chair once again. 3 days of intense meetings in New York City, and nothing had worked out. His agricultural equipment company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and that contract was his last hope. Sheikh Zayed Al Maktoum was walking toward the door for the 4th time that morning, visibly irritated by something Arthur couldn't understand. That's when the door opened, and in walked Martha Higgins, the 58-year-old janitor who had worked in the building for over 2 decades. She was carrying her cleaning cart and didn't seem to have noticed the tension in the room. "Excuse me, gentlemen," she said softly, heading toward the trash bin. "I'll just collect the garbage real quick." The Sheikh stopped mid-stride and watched her with curiosity. Arthur, nervous, signaled for her to come back later, but Zayed raised his hand. "No problem," he said in slow, measured English. "Please, go ahead." Martha smiled shyly and began changing the trash bag. Arthur scoffed with impatience. As if the situation weren't complicated enough, now he had to deal with unnecessary interruptions. He had invested everything in that meeting. He'd even sold his car to bring the Sheikh to the United States, hoping to convince him to buy his irrigation systems for the desert of the United Arab Emirates. "Mr. Zayed, please, we can continue our conversation," Arthur insisted, trying to regain control of the situation. "We still have a lot to discuss." The Sheikh looked at him with a serious expression and shook his head. "My friend Arthur, we've talked for 3 days. Your numbers are impressive, your technology is good, but something is missing. I can't feel the soul of your project." "The soul?" Arthur repeated, confused. "Sir, we're talking about irrigation, advanced technical systems. That's exactly the problem," Zayed interrupted. "You Westerners always think everything is solved with machines and charts, but you forgot the most important thing, the people." Martha, who had finished changing the trash, had to pass by the Sheikh to leave the room. At that moment, she overheard part of the conversation and couldn't help but comment. "Sorry for butting in, sir, but you're right. My grandmother always said that the land only bears good fruit when the one who tends it truly loves it." Arthur's eyes widened, embarrassed by the situation. How dare a simple janitor voice an opinion about international business? But Sheikh Zayed turned fully toward her with genuine interest in his eyes. "Your grandmother was wise, Ma'am." He paused, waiting for her to introduce herself. "Martha Higgins, sir. Sorry for speaking without being asked." "Don't apologize, Mrs. Martha. Tell me more about your grandmother." Arthur couldn't believe what he was seeing. The man who for 3 days had barely paid attention to his professional presentations was now interested in the stories of a janitor. He tried to intervene again. "Mr. Zayed, I believe we're losing focus on our meeting." "On the contrary, Arthur, perhaps we're finally finding the focus," Zayed replied, without taking his eyes off Martha. "Mrs. Martha, do you work with the land?" "I did, yes, sir. I was born in the countryside of Mississippi in a small town called Ruleville. My family always had a vegetable garden and some livestock. I came to New York City 20 years ago, after my husband got sick, and we needed medical treatment that was only available here in the capital." Zayed nodded with understanding, as if every word she said made perfect sense. Arthur shifted in his chair, impatient, but something in the Sheikh's gaze made him stay quiet. "And how did you manage to grow crops in the drought of the Dust Bowl?" Zayed asked. Sir, now that was art. My grandmother Mabel, God rest her soul, knew every piece of land like it was her own child. She could tell when it was going to rain just by looking at the clouds, and she knew where to dig for water by watching where the birds drank. She used to say the land speaks, but only those who listen with their heart can understand. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us folks who are just starting out. Now continuing on. Arthur watched the conversation with a mix of fascination and despair. On one hand, he saw his potential client more relaxed than he'd been in days. On the other, he felt he was completely losing control of the most important negotiation of his life. "Mrs. Martha," said Zayed, "may I ask you a personal question? Do you miss the land?" Martha's face filled with nostalgia. She leaned on the handle of her broom and let out a deep sigh before answering. "Every day, sir. I wake up each morning dreaming of the smell of wet earth after the first rain of the year. Here in the big city, you get used to the concrete, but your heart never forgets where it came from. And if you could go back? Oh, I'd run back in a heartbeat. But I can't, you know. My Harold needs expensive medicine, and the doctors here are better. And my 3 children have already gotten used to city life. The youngest is even in college studying engineering." Arthur noticed tears welling up in Martha's eyes and felt a tightness in his chest. He had never stopped to think about the personal lives of the staff at the building where he rented his office. To him, they were just people who came and went, keeping everything clean and running. Zayed stepped closer to Martha and said something that surprised everyone. "Mrs. Martha, you remind me so much of my mother." "Your mother, sir?" "Yes. She too knew every grain of sand in our desert. She could find water where everyone said there was none. She passed away 5 years ago, but her lessons about respecting the land still guide all of our projects." Arthur noticed a change in the Sheikh's expression. There was a softness there that he hadn't seen before. He decided to try to seize the moment. "Mr. Zayed, that's exactly what our equipment does. It helps find water, to use every drop efficiently." "Arthur," Zayed interrupted him gently, "you still don't understand. It's not about the equipment. It's about the philosophy behind it." Martha, who had been listening to everything, had an idea. She turned to Arthur with a determined look. "Mr. Arthur, may I make a suggestion?" Arthur hesitated. Taking advice from a janitor about his multi-million-dollar negotiation seemed absurd, but Zayed nodded encouragingly, so he had no choice. "Of course, Mrs. Martha. Have you shown Mr. Zayed how your machines work? But have you shown him why you want to help his people?" The question caught Arthur off guard. He had been so focused on the technical specifications and the profits that he had never stopped to think about the human motivation behind the deal. Well, it's a good deal for both parties," he stammered. "No, sir. That's a businessman's answer. But Mr. Zayed doesn't just want to do business. He wants to know if you truly care about his people." Zayed looked at Arthur with expectation. It was clear that Martha had hit the nail on the head. Arthur felt he was at a decisive moment. He could stick with his cold corporate pitch or try to genuinely connect with the man in front of him. "Mr. Zayed," Arthur began, his voice less confident, "I must confess that I started this project thinking only about the commercial side. But during our preparation for this meeting, I read a great deal about your country, about the challenges you face with water scarcity. And the more I read, the more I thought about the stories my own grandmother used to tell me about the drought in the Dust Bowl." "Go on," Zayed encouraged. "My paternal grandmother was from Arizona. She lost 3 brothers in a terrible drought in the 1950s. She always said that hunger doesn't just kill the body, it also kills people's hope. When I developed this equipment, I was thinking of her, of the tears she shed whenever she remembered her brothers." Martha smiled approvingly, and Zayed nodded slowly. "Now you're finally speaking like a man, not like a salesman," said the Sheikh. "But tell me something. How do you intend to implement this technology while respecting our culture?" Arthur opened his mouth to respond, but realized he didn't have a ready answer. All his plans focused on the technical aspects, not the cultural ones. "I haven't thought about that in detail yet," he admitted. That's when Martha had another idea. "May I make one more suggestion?" Both Arthur and Zayed looked at her with curiosity. "Back home, when an outsider came with new ideas, my grandmother always said, 'First you learn how we do things, then you teach how you do things.' Does Mr. Arthur know how Mr. Zayed's people do things?" Zayed smiled for the first time in 3 days. "Mrs. Martha is right. Do you know our traditional irrigation methods?" Arthur shook his head, feeling smaller and smaller. "Then how can you improve something you don't know?" asked Zayed, but without hostility. "Mr. Zayed," said Martha, "why don't you teach young Arthur how you do things, and then he can show how he can help improve them?" The suggestion seemed to please the Sheikh. He returned to his chair for the first time that morning. "All right. Arthur, sit down. Let me tell you about the Falaj irrigation canals." "The Falaj irrigation canals?" Arthur repeated, grabbing a notepad. They're irrigation systems we've used for over 1,000 years, underground channels that carry water from the mountains to the arable land, built by our ancestors with wisdom passed from father to son. Arthur was writing furiously, but Zayed stopped talking and looked at him disapprovingly. You're doing it again. Doing what? Thinking only about the technique. Put that notepad away. Listen with your heart, as Mrs. Martha said. Arthur put the notepad away, feeling vulnerable without his notes. The Falaj irrigation canals aren't just irrigation channels, Zayed continued. They're symbols of community cooperation. Each family has specific responsibilities for their maintenance. Children learn from a young age that water is sacred, that every drop must be respected. It's the same back home, Martha commented. My grandmother used to say that water has no owner, only a guardian. Zayed nodded vigorously. Exactly. Mrs. Martha understands something that many engineers don't. Water connects people, creates community. Arthur began to understand where he had gone wrong. His presentation had focused entirely on technical efficiency, completely ignoring the human and cultural aspect. Mr. Zayed, he said humbly, I recognize that my approach was misguided. How can I fix this? First, you need to understand that any project in our country must involve the local community from the start. Second, you must respect and incorporate our traditional methods, not replace them. And third, added Martha, you have to see people as people, not as numbers on a spreadsheet. Arthur felt a lump in his throat. The janitor's words struck him deeply because they were true. He had become so obsessed with profits and statistics that he had forgotten the human element. You're right, he admitted. But how can I change all this now? I already presented the project in a completely wrong way. It's never too late to start over, said Martha wisely. My grandmother used to plant beans 3 times a year. If the first planting didn't work out, she tried again, just in a different way. Zayed laughed at the comparison. Mrs. Martha, you should be an international advisor. Arthur, how about we start over, but this time the right way? Arthur felt a mix of relief and nervousness. He had a second chance, but he knew he needed to approach it completely differently. I accept, but I need to be honest. I don't know how to do this alone. I've never taken cultural aspects into account in my work. You don't have to do it alone, said Zayed. What if Mrs. Martha helped us? She clearly understands both farming and people. Arthur looked at Martha, surprised by the suggestion. The janitor seemed equally surprised. Mr. Zayed, I don't have formal education for these kinds of things. Mrs. Martha, Zayed interrupted, in the last 20 minutes you've shown more wisdom about community projects than many consultants I've known. Life experience is worth more than a diploma on the wall. Arthur hesitated for a moment. The idea of including a janitor in international negotiations seemed crazy, but then he remembered how Martha's presence had completely changed the dynamics of the meeting. Mrs. Martha, he said, Mr. Zayed is right. You understand things that I don't understand. Would you like to help us rethink this project? Martha looked at the 2 men, visibly moved. I don't know if I'm the right person, Mrs. Martha, Zayed said gently. My mother always used to say that God puts the right people in the right place at the right time. You showed up here today just when we needed a new perspective. Besides, Arthur added, if we agree to work together, of course there would be adequate compensation for your time and knowledge. It's not about money, young Arthur. It's just that I'm afraid I won't be up to it. Mrs. Martha, said Zayed, can I tell you a secret? I'm afraid sometimes too. Afraid of making wrong decisions, of not being able to help my people the way I should. But my mother taught me that fear only stops those who don't try. Martha took a deep breath and looked at the 2 men. There was something in her eyes that Arthur couldn't decipher. It was determination, mixed with vulnerability. All right, she said finally. I'll try to help, but with one condition. What? The 2 asked at the same time. I want you to promise that you'll truly listen to what the people have to say. There's no point in making a beautiful project if it doesn't serve the people who are going to use it. Zayed and Arthur looked at each other and nodded. We promise, said Zayed solemnly. Then let's start over, said Martha, surprising everyone by taking the lead. Mr. Zahid, can you tell us more about what life is like for the people who are going to use this equipment? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now let's continue. Over the next 2 hours, the meeting room transformed into a completely different environment. Zayed told stories about desert farmers, their daily struggles, their traditions, their dreams. Martha asked questions that Arthur would never have thought to ask. How did women participate in farming? How did children learn about irrigation? What kind of plants were most important to the community? Arthur, initially just observing, began asking his own questions, but now focused on people, not just technology. He discovered that many families depended on farming not just to survive, but also to keep their cultural traditions alive. Mr. Zayed, said Martha at one point, have you ever thought about teaching those traditions to young people in the big cities too? What do you mean? Back in my home region, the young people are losing the knowledge of their elders. They go to the city and forget how to care for the land. But if there were a way to show that tradition and technology can go hand in hand. Ahmed grew thoughtful. That's interesting. Many young people in the United Arab Emirates are also drifting away from traditional farming. Arthur had a sudden idea. What if we created an educational program alongside the irrigation project, something that taught both traditional techniques and the new technologies? Now you're thinking like a sensible man, said Martha, smiling. My grandmother always said that knowledge that isn't passed along dies with the one who holds it. Mrs. Martha is right, agreed Ahmed. But how do we structure it? Let me think, said Martha, getting up and walking around the room. Back home, the elders taught the young by working alongside them. What if Mr. Sterling's equipment were installed in places where the traditional masters could teach alongside it? Arthur felt a growing excitement. The idea was brilliant in its simplicity. That would create a natural bridge between tradition and innovation, he said. The young people would learn both ways. And the traditional masters would feel valued, not replaced, added Ahmed. Exactly, said Martha. And families would stay united, because everyone would have something important to teach and to learn. Ahmed stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city of New York City below. Arthur, Mrs. Martha, you just solved the biggest problem with our original project. What problem? Asked Arthur. Community resistance. When you presented your equipment as a replacement for traditional methods, you were asking people to abandon their cultural identity. Now we're talking about strengthening it. Martha nodded vigorously. That's exactly right. Back home, when someone arrived wanting to change everything, people pushed back. But when someone arrived wanting to learn and contribute, everyone opened their doors. Arthur realized he was experiencing something transformative. Not just a shift in business strategy, but a shift in perspective on what truly mattered. Martha, he said, I need to confess something to you. What is it, young man? 3 days ago, I only saw you as the building's janitor. Today I discovered you're one of the wisest people I've ever met. Martha lowered her eyes, moved. Mr. Arthur, I'm no wiser than anyone else. I just learned to listen to others and to value what I've learned in life. But that's exactly what was missing from our project, said Ahmed. Listening and valuing. Arthur felt a weight in his chest as he thought of how many opportunities he had lost by not truly listening to the people around him. Martha, I'd like you to be my official partner on this project, not as an employee, but as a partner specializing in community development. Partner? Martha's eyes widened. Sir, I don't know anything about business paperwork. You don't need to, interrupted Arthur. That's what I have accountants and lawyers for. What I need is your wisdom, your experience, your ability to see what I can't see. Ahmed applauded the decision. Perfect, Arthur. Now we truly have a complete team. You with the technology, me with the local knowledge of the United Arab Emirates, and Mrs. Martha with community wisdom. Martha still seemed in shock. But I have a family. I have a sick husband. I can't travel much. That's not a problem, said Arthur. The project can be structured so you work mainly here from the United States, with occasional trips only when necessary. And we'll make sure your husband gets the best medical care available, added Ahmed. Consider it part of the investment in the project. Martha began to cry silently. I never imagined something like this could happen in my life. Mrs. Martha, said Ahmed gently, you saved this project. More than that, you taught us what truly matters. Arthur nodded, feeling that he too had been saved, not just the project, but himself as a person. Martha, there's something I need to ask you. What is it? How did you know that the problem with our negotiation was a lack of human connection? Martha smiled through her tears. Mr. Arthur, I've been cleaning offices for 20 years. I've seen a lot of meetings, a lot of negotiations, and I learned that when people just keep talking about numbers and machines, forgetting that there are real people on the other side, things don't work out. And why did you decide to intervene today? Because I saw that you two are good people. Mr. Ahmed has the eyes of someone who truly cares about his people, and you have a good heart. You were just a bit lost in the desperation to save your company. Arthur laughed, recognizing the truth in her words. You're right. I was so desperate to save the business that I lost sight of the purpose. Now that we've found the purpose, said Ahmed, let's talk about the practical details. Arthur, how much time do you need to restructure your proposal to include the cultural and educational component? With Martha's help, I believe we can have something solid in 2 weeks. Perfect. Martha, would you be available to work with us during these 2 weeks? Of course, Mr. Ahmed. But I need to let my supervisor know about the changes to my schedule. Actually, said Arthur, I think you'll need to let them know you're resigning from the cleaning company. What do you mean? Well, if you're going to be my partner, you can't keep working for another company. But don't worry, your salary as a specialist consultant will be much better. Martha was speechless for a few moments. Mr. Arthur, I still can't believe this is happening. Believe it, said Ahmed. And if the project is as successful as we hope, this could be just the beginning. Imagine how many other communities could benefit from this approach. Arthur had another idea. Martha, you mentioned your son is studying engineering. How about including him in the project too? He could be the bridge between the younger generation and our methods. My Harold Jr.? He would be over the moon. He dreams of working on things that help people. Then it's decided, said Ahmed. This is the start of a partnership that could change many lives. Arthur looked at Martha and felt an emotion he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just relief at having saved his business, but something deeper. It was the feeling of doing something truly important. Martha, can I ask you one more personal question? Of course. Aren't you afraid that people will question your ability because you don't have a formal academic education? Martha thought for a moment before answering. Mr. Arthur, for 20 years I've cleaned the offices of people with a lot of education. And I learned one thing. A diploma on the wall doesn't guarantee wisdom in the heart. If God gave me this opportunity, it's because He knows I can help. Ahmed nodded approvingly. Mrs. Martha, in my country, we hold our elders in high regard because we know that life experience is the greatest university that exists. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. But you can just call me Martha. We're partners now, right? Martha, smiled Ahmed. It will be an honor to work with you. Arthur watched the interaction between the two with admiration. In a few hours, Martha had broken down barriers that he hadn't been able to break in 3 days of elaborate presentations. Well, said Arthur, I think we have a lot of work ahead of us. How about we schedule our first planning meeting for tomorrow? That works, agreed Ahmed, but I suggest we hold it at Martha's house. At my house? She was surprised. Yes, explained Zayed. If we're going to work with communities, we need to understand how a real family works. Besides, I'd like to meet your husband and children. My Harold will be thrilled, said Martha, smiling. He's always dreamed of meeting people from other countries. Arthur realized Zayed was right. Getting out of the corporate environment and into a family setting would help them stay focused on the human side of the project. It's a great idea, he agreed. Martha, we don't want to bother you, but if it's possible... Bother? Not at all. I'll make the best pot roast you've ever had in your lives. Zayed laughed. I don't know what pot roast is, but I'm sure it'll be delicious. It's the most American dish there is, explained Arthur. You'll love it. Then it's settled, said Zayed. Tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon at Martha's house. And Arthur, bring a notepad. You'll need to write down plenty of recipes in addition to the project ideas. Everyone laughed, and Arthur realized it had been a long time since he'd felt so relaxed and optimistic. Martha, he said, I still can't believe how your presence changed everything in such a short time. Mr. Arthur, sometimes we need to stop complicating the simple things. My grandmother always said, when you treat people like people, they treat you like people too. Zayed stood up and extended his hand to Martha. Martha, thank you for teaching us what really matters. She shook his hand, still moved. Thank you for giving me this chance, Mr. Zayed. Just Zayed now, he smiled. We're partners. Arthur also stood up and, on impulse, hugged Martha. Thank you for saving my company and teaching me to be a better person. You're welcome, Mr. Arthur. Just make sure you don't forget these lessons when the project works out. I promise I won't forget, said Arthur, and for the first time in a long time he was making a promise he knew he could keep. When Zayed finally headed for the door, it was to leave for a completely different reason than the one he'd been trying to act on for 3 days. This time he was leaving with the excitement of someone who had found exactly what he was looking for. See you tomorrow, he said. I can't wait to meet the family that raised such a wise woman. Martha walked him to the door, still holding her broom. Zayed, may I ask you something? Of course. Do you really believe I can help with the project? Zayed stopped and looked at her seriously. Martha, in 3 days of meetings with Arthur, we couldn't solve anything. In 3 hours with you, we solved everything. What do you think? She smiled, finally allowing herself to believe it was all real. I think my grandmother is up in heaven, proud of her granddaughter. I'm sure she is, said Zayed. And tomorrow, I want to hear more stories about her. After Zayed left, Arthur and Martha were alone in the living room. The silence was comfortable, full of possibilities. Arthur, said Martha. Can I call you Arthur now? Of course, after all, we're partners. Arthur, thank you for listening to me. So often people like me go unnoticed. Martha, the truth is you're the one who saved me. I was so lost in my own arrogance that I almost missed the opportunity of a lifetime. It wasn't arrogance, Arthur. It was desperation. When we're afraid of losing everything, sometimes we forget what really matters. Arthur nodded, recognizing the truth. And now? How do I tell my wife that my new partner is the building's janitor? Martha laughed. Tell her your new partner is a woman who understands people and the land. The rest is just details. You're right, Eleanor is going to love you. I hope so. And you need to tell her the whole story properly. How Zayed almost left, and how we ended up becoming partners. I'll tell her everything, Arthur promised. By the way, what if she goes with you tomorrow to your house? Of course. The more the merrier. My house is small, but my heart is big. Arthur smiled, thinking about how his life had changed completely in a single morning. Martha, can I confess something? Go ahead. I was thinking about giving up on everything. If this project didn't work out, I was going to close the company and look for a job. And now I feel like we're at the beginning of something much bigger than I ever imagined. Martha nodded. You know why? Because now you're thinking about helping people, not just making money. You're right. And you know what? For the first time in years, I'm excited to go to work tomorrow. Me too, Martha smiled. I never thought I'd trade my janitor's broom for project blueprints, but life sometimes surprises us. Don't trade it completely, Arthur teased. Your cleaning wisdom might come in handy for clearing out muddled ideas too. They both laughed, and Arthur realized there was something special about Martha's simplicity and honesty that made him feel like a better person. Martha, can I ask you one more thing? Go ahead. How do you manage to stay so positive after so many hardships in life? Martha looked thoughtful for a moment. You know, Arthur, my grandmother always used to say that life is like a farm. Sometimes there's drought, sometimes there are pests, sometimes there's too much rain. But if you don't give up, harvest time always comes. And do you think our harvest time has come? I think we're planting right now. The harvest comes later, when we see the project truly helping people. Arthur nodded, moved by the simple wisdom of his new partner. Well then, let's plant it right. That's right, Martha agreed. And remember, Arthur, the best seed is the one planted with love. When they finally said goodbye that afternoon, both knew their lives had changed forever. Arthur drove home thinking about how he would tell Eleanor about the extraordinary events of the day. Martha put away her cleaning supplies for the last time, knowing that the next morning she would wake up not as a janitor, but as a partner in an international project. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and hit like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us folks who are just starting out. Now, continuing. The next morning, Martha woke up before sunrise, as she had done every day for 20 years. But this time the reason was different. It wasn't to get to her cleaning job early, but to prepare her home to welcome her new partners. Harold, her husband, was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee when she walked in. Martha, did you sleep well? I saw you tossing and turning all night. Oh, Harold, I still can't believe what happened yesterday. Tell me again, he asked, his eyes shining. It still feels like a dream. Martha poured him some coffee and began recounting the previous day's events once again. Harold, who had worked as a mechanic before falling ill, listened with growing attention. Woman, do you realize you saved that man's company? It wasn't quite like that, Harold. I just helped them understand each other better. Martha, my dear, you always downplay your qualities. Remember when you helped Mrs. Dorothy resolve her problem with her son? That was different. No, it wasn't. You have a gift for understanding people and helping them sort things out. You always have. Martha smiled, remembering several situations over the years when neighbors and friends would come asking for advice. Maybe that's why God put me in that room yesterday. That's exactly why, Harold agreed. And now tell me, what are you going to do if this project really works out? I'm going to help as much as I can, Harold, and if everything goes well, maybe we can even go back to Mississippi one day. Go back to Mississippi? Harold perked up. Martha, do you really think this is possible? If the project grows the way they're saying, I can work from anywhere. And with money for your treatment, you can do physical therapy there too. Harold took his wife's hand. Woman, 20 years ago you left your homeland to take care of me. It would be a dream come true to be able to go back. Easy, Harold. Let's see how things develop. But I have a good feeling about all of this. At that moment, Harold Jr., the youngest son, and Grace, the middle daughter, arrived. The oldest, Simon, had already left for work. Mom, said Harold Jr., excited, I still can't believe you're going to work with a sheikh from the United Arab Emirates. Easy, my son. Everything is still in the early stages. But Mom, said Grace, this could change our whole lives. It could, sweetheart. But remember that big changes also bring big responsibilities. Mom, said Harold Jr., can I skip college today to meet them? Absolutely not, Harold Jr. Education comes first. They'll still be here when you get back. But Mom, no buts. If you want to work on the project, you have to show you're responsible with your studies first. Harold laughed. Martha, you're going to be a tough boss. I'm not going to be anybody's boss, Harold. I'm going to be a partner. And partnership is serious business. Around 10 in the morning, Martha started preparing the pot roast. She had bought the best ingredients she could find at the corner market. While cooking, she thought about how strange it would be to host an Arab sheikh in her humble home on the outskirts of New York City. The phone rang. It was Arthur. Martha, good morning, how are you? Good morning, Arthur. I'm well, getting everything ready here. Martha, I have a somewhat awkward question. What is it? Zayed asked me if he should bring a gift, or if there's any special protocol we should follow. Martha laughed. Arthur, tell Zayed that around here the only protocol is this. Be a good person. He doesn't need to bring anything, but if he wants to, he can bring whatever comes from the heart. Perfect. And Martha, Eleanor is eager to meet you. I'm eager to meet her too. It's an honor to welcome my partner's wife. Arthur smiled on the other end of the line. It was still strange to hear Martha refer to him as a partner, but it was a good kind of strange. Martha, can I confess something? Go ahead. I told Eleanor everything that happened yesterday, and she cried. Why did she cry? From emotion. She said I had finally found the purpose I'd been searching for all this time. Your Eleanor seems like a wise woman. She is, you'll like her. And Martha, what is it? Thank you once again for everything. Stop thanking me, Arthur. We're a team now. At 2 o'clock sharp, a black car stopped in front of Martha's humble home. Zayed got out, followed by Arthur and Eleanor. The neighbors watched curiously from their windows, intrigued by the elegant visitors. Martha opened the door wearing her best dress, nervous but smiling. Welcome to my home, she said. Martha, said Zayed, handing her a small package. I brought something from my country for you. You didn't have to, Zayed. I wanted to. It's our tradition to always honor the home that receives us. Martha opened the package and found a beautiful hand-embroidered silk scarf. Zayed, this must have cost a fortune. It wasn't the price that mattered, but the care. This scarf was embroidered by the women of my village. Now, you are part of our family. Martha was moved and embraced Zayed, who returned the affection. Eleanor, said Arthur, this is Martha, the woman who saved our project. Eleanor, an elegant middle-aged woman, hugged Martha warmly. Martha, Arthur told me everything. You're an angel. I'm no angel, Eleanor. I'm just a woman who learned to listen. Well then, you're more of an angel than you realize. Martha led them inside the house. It was simple but impeccably clean and organized. Harold was sitting in a wheelchair in the living room, wearing his best shirt. This is my husband, Harold, Martha introduced. Zayed approached and shook Harold's hand respectfully. Mr. Harold, it's an honor to meet the husband of such a special woman. The honor is mine, Mr. Zayed. Martha told me all about your project. And what do you think? I think you chose the right person. My wife has a heart as big as the world and the mind to solve any problem. Eleanor sat down next to Harold. Mr. Harold, Arthur told me you're a mechanic. I am, ma'am. Or I was before I got sick. But I still understand machines. Then we have something in common, said Zayed. Our irrigation systems are old machines, but very efficient ones. Harold's eyes lit up. I'd love to see those machines someday. If everything goes well with the project, that might be possible, said Zayed. Martha served the pot roast, and Zayed took the first bite with curiosity. His expression changed immediately. Martha, this is delicious. What are these flavors? Family secret, she joked. My grandmother taught me. I need to take this recipe back to my cook in the Emirates. I'll be happy to teach you. During lunch, they talked about everything. American culture, Arab traditions, agriculture, family. Zayed was particularly interested in Harold's stories about mechanics. Mr. Harold, he said at one point, I'd like to show you some photos of our traditional irrigation systems. Zayed picked up his tablet and showed images of the Falaj irrigation canals. Harold looked at them with growing attention. Interesting, Harold commented. This gear system here, if it were adapted with some modern parts, could be much more efficient. Arthur came closer to see the images. Harold, do you know hydraulics? I do. I worked for many years with water pumps and irrigation systems before coming to the city. Zayed looked at Martha. Martha, it seems your family's talent goes beyond what we imagined. Harold was always good with machines, she said proudly. And what if his illness isn't an obstacle? Asked Zayed. What do you mean? Asked Harold. Well, a good portion of the consulting work can be done remotely these days. If you have technical knowledge, and Martha has community wisdom, Arthur finished the thought, we could have a full family consulting team. Harold looked at Martha in disbelief. Martha, are they serious? It seems so, dear. Eleanor, who had been watching the interaction, commented, You know what? This makes perfect sense. A community project should really involve entire families. Exactly, agreed Zayed. In our country, we greatly respect wisdom that is passed down from generation to generation. At that moment, Harold Jr. arrived from college. Martha introduced him to everyone. This is my son, Harold Jr., who's studying engineering. Harold Jr. greeted everyone shyly, still impressed by the situation. Harold Jr., said Arthur, Your mother told me you're interested in working with social projects. Yes, sir. I've always wanted to use engineering to help people. What kind of engineering are you studying? Asked Zayed. Civil engineering with a focus on water resources. Zayed and Arthur exchanged glances, surprised. Harold Jr., said Zayed, it seems it's no coincidence that you're studying exactly the field of our project. I can't believe it, said Harold Jr. You work with water resources? We do, confirmed Arthur, and if everything goes well, maybe you can be part of the team. Harold Jr. looked at his mother, moved. Mum, is this real? Yes, it is, my son. But remember, first you finish college. Of course, Mum, but it's a dream to be able to work on this. Zayed was impressed by Martha's composure. Martha, I admire how you keep your feet on the ground, even with all these changes. Zayed, my grandmother always used to say, feet on the ground and eyes on the horizon. There's no point in dreaming big if you don't know how to stand firm. Your grandmother was truly wise. Through the afternoon, they developed the project ideas in more detail. Harold contributed with technical suggestions. Harold Jr. asked smart questions about implementation, and Martha kept focusing on the human aspect. Martha, Zayed said at one point, I have a proposal for you. What proposal? I'd like you to come to the United Arab Emirates with me next week to visit the communities where we'll implement the project. Next week? Martha was startled. Zayed, I've never left the United States. I know, but it's important that you meet the people we're going to help. But what about Harold? I can't leave him alone. Martha, Harold said, accept this opportunity. The kids can take care of me for a few days. Dad's right, Mama, Harold Jr. agreed. You can't miss this chance. Eleanor offered. Martha, if you want, I can come by every day to help with Harold. Eleanor, I can't accept that. Of course you can. We're partners now, remember? Zayed added, Martha, we'll also bring a doctor to examine Harold and see if there are more advanced treatments available in the United Arab Emirates. In the UAE? Harold perked up. Yes, our hospitals have very advanced technology for rehabilitation. Martha was speechless. It was so much happening all at once. Zayed, none of this feels real. It is real, Martha, and this is only the beginning. Arthur watched everything with growing admiration. In less than 24 hours, what had started as a business negotiation had turned into a partnership that would involve entire families and could change many lives. Martha, he said, will you accept the trip? Martha looked at Harold, who nodded encouragingly. I accept, she said finally, but with one condition. Which is, I want you to promise me that if I say something won't work for the communities, you'll listen to me. We promise, Zayed and Arthur said at the same time. Then it's settled. I'm going to the UAE. Harold Jr. stood up and hugged his mother. Mom, I'm so proud of you. And I'm proud to have a family that supports me. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly, with planning, dreams, and a lot of emotion. When they finally said goodbye, it was already night. Martha, Zayed said at the door, thank you for your hospitality. It's been a long time since I've felt so welcomed. Make yourself at home, Zayed. And now you're part of the family. Martha, Eleanor said, tomorrow I'll start arranging your travel documents. Eleanor, thank you for everything. You're an angel. We're the lucky ones for having found you. Arthur was the last to say goodbye. Martha, yesterday morning I was a desperate businessman about to lose everything. Today I'm a partner of one of the most extraordinary women I've ever met. Arthur, yesterday I was a janitor worried only about getting by. Today I'm a partner in a project that can help a lot of people. I think we've all changed. For the better, Arthur agreed. Much for the better. After the visitors left, the family gathered in the living room to process everything that had happened. Martha, Harold said, do you realize what you've accomplished? Accomplished what? You turned a business meeting into a family, Martha smiled. Maybe that's because the best things in life happen when we treat others like family. Mom, Harold Jr. said, can I confess something? Go ahead, son. I always thought you were underestimated at work. Now I see you've finally found people who recognize your worth. Harold Jr., A person's worth does not depend on the recognition of others. It depends on how they treat others. Even so, Mum, you deserve all this that's happening. Deserving or not, my son, now it's our responsibility to make it work. Harold took his wife's hand. Martha, I'm sure it will work out. You have a gift for making things work. That night, Martha took a long time to fall asleep. She was nervous about the international trip, but also excited about the possibilities. She thought of her grandmother, Mabel, and how proud she would be to know that her granddaughter was about to cross the ocean to help people on the other side of the world. The following week, preparations for the trip were intense. Eleanor helped Martha get her passport on an urgent basis, buy clothes suitable for the arid climate of the Emirates, and understand a bit about the local culture. Martha, said Eleanor while they were shopping, do you realize that you'll be the first person in your family to travel internationally? I do, Eleanor. Sometimes I wake up thinking it's all a dream. It's not a dream, it's deserved. Eleanor, can I confess something to you? Of course. I'm afraid. Afraid of what? Of not really being able to help? Of not living up to the responsibility? Eleanor stopped walking and looked at Martha seriously. Martha, in 2 days you solved a problem that Arthur and Zayed couldn't solve in a week. You have a natural gift for understanding people and situations. Trust yourself. Thank you, Eleanor. Sometimes we need to hear these things. Martha, can I give you some advice? Sure. When you get there, be exactly who you are. It was your authenticity that won Zayed over. Don't try to be different. I'll remember that. On the day of the trip, the whole family went to the airport to say goodbye. Martha was nervous but determined. Harold, she said, hugging her husband, take good care of yourself. You take care of yourself, woman. And remember, you represent all of us there. Mum, said Harold Jr., bring back lots of stories to tell. I will, my son. Zayed arrived at the airport accompanied by Arthur and Eleanor. Martha, ready for the adventure? Ready, she said, trying to hide her nervousness. During the flight, Zayed talked more about his country, his family, and his expectations for the project. Martha, I want you to know that my family is eager to meet you. Your family? Yes. I told my wife and children about you. They were impressed by your story. Zayed, I hope I don't disappoint them. Martha, it's impossible for you to disappoint anyone. You have a special light. When they arrived in the United Arab Emirates, Martha was impressed by the modernity of the airport and the city. But what struck her most was the hospitality of the people. Zayed, she said in the car, everyone here is so polite and welcoming. It's our culture, Martha. Hospitality is sacred to us. It's the same in my homeland. My grandmother always said that a guest is a blessing from God. Your grandmother and my mother thought alike. During the 3 days she spent in the Emirates, Martha visited several rural communities, talked with farmers, learned about traditional irrigation systems, and observed the challenges faced by families. What impressed her most was discovering how the difficulties were similar to the ones she knew from the Dust Bowl: water scarcity, rural exodus of young people, loss of traditions. Zayed, she said after visiting a traditional farm, it's incredible how the problems are similar to those in my homeland. That's why you understand our reality so well, and that's why I know our solution can work. During conversations with the local farmers, Martha used the same approach she had used with Zayed. She listened first, asked questions about people and traditions, and only then began to talk about solutions. Mrs. Martha, said one of the oldest farmers through the interpreter, you speak like someone who knows our land. I know lands similar to yours, she replied, and I know that those who love the land always find a way to make it produce. On the last day of the trip, Zayed organized a meeting with community leaders to present the revised project. Martha was nervous, but Zayed reassured her, Martha, just be yourself. Tell them about your experience, your ideas, your dreams for the project. The meeting was a success. Martha spoke about the importance of preserving traditions while adopting new technologies, about involving entire families in the projects, about building bridges between generations. When she finished speaking, One of the community's most respected leaders stood up and said, "This woman understands our soul. We fully support her project." Zayed translated for Martha, who was deeply moved. "Zayed, tell them it's everyone's project. I just helped find the way." On the flight back to the United States, Martha was radiant and full of ideas. "Zayed, I already know how we're going to structure everything. We'll create working groups that mix traditional knowledge with modern technology. Each group will have a traditional master, a young apprentice, and a technician." "Perfect. And how do we connect this with the United States?" "We can do an exchange. Bring some farmers from there to see the Dust Bowl and take some from here to see the Emirates." "Martha, you're thinking on a big scale." "I'm thinking on a human scale, Zayed. A big scale is the consequence." When they arrived in the United States, Arthur was waiting at the airport, eager to know how the trip had been. "So?" he asked before even greeting them. "Arthur," said Martha, "we have a lot of work ahead of us." "Good work?" "The best kind of work, the kind that will help many people." On the way home, Martha told him about everything she had seen and learned. Arthur listened, fascinated, realizing they had found not just a consultant, but a true visionary. "Martha," he said, "while you were traveling, I received calls from other companies interested in similar projects." "Other companies?" "Yes. It seems the news of our partnership with Zayed has spread. There are people who want to develop similar projects in Africa, in Asia." Martha became thoughtful. "Arthur, that's good, but we have to be careful." "Careful about what?" "Not to lose focus on what really matters. If it gets too big too fast, it could just become business again." "You're right. Let's grow slowly, always maintaining quality and purpose." "Exactly. My grandmother always said, 'A tree that grows too fast doesn't bear sweet fruit.'" When they finally arrived at Martha's house, the whole family was waiting. Harold was visibly better, and Harold Jr. was beaming. "Mom," shouted Harold Jr., "I have news for you." "What news, my son?" "I got an internship at Mr. Arthur's company." Martha looked at Arthur, surprised. "Arthur, you offered an internship to my son?" "I did. After talking to him last week, I realized he has exactly the profile we need. Young, enthusiastic, and with solid values he learned at home." Martha hugged her son, emotional. "Harold Jr., now it's your responsibility to show that it's not just because you're my son." "Don't worry, Mum, I'll do my best." "And Harold," she asked, turning to her husband, "how are you?" "Better, Martha. The doctor Zayed brought said there's a new treatment that can help me a lot." "What treatment?" Zayed approached. "Martha, while you were visiting the communities, I arranged for a rehabilitation specialist to examine Harold. There are new therapies available that can significantly improve his condition." "Zayed, how can I thank you for all this?" "Martha, you already thanked us by agreeing to be our partner and teaching us what truly matters." That night, as they all had dinner together, Martha looked around the table and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. In less than 2 weeks, her life had changed completely, but in a way she could never have imagined possible. "Everyone," she said, "I want to tell you something." Everyone stopped talking and looked at her. "These past few days have made me understand that there is no such thing as coincidence. Everything we go through in life, all the suffering and the joy, serves to prepare us for moments like this." "What do you mean, Mom?" asked Harold Jr. "If we hadn't come from the countryside to take care of Dad, I never would have worked in that building. If I hadn't worked there, I wouldn't have walked into that room at just the right time. If I hadn't learned from my grandmother to listen and value people, I wouldn't have known how to help." Harold took his wife's hand. "Martha, are you saying that everything we went through had a purpose?" "I'm saying that sometimes the bad things in life are just the road to very good things." Zayed nodded. "Martha, in our culture, we believe that Allah places obstacles in our path to strengthen us for the blessings that are to come." "It's the same, Zayed. My grandmother always said that God works in mysterious ways." Arthur, who had been listening in silence, was moved. "Martha, can I confess something?" "Go ahead." "Before I met you, I was losing faith in many things, in work, in people, in myself. And now I see that extraordinary people exist in places where I never thought to look, and that sometimes help comes from where we least expect it." Eleanor, who had just arrived, added, "Martha, You didn't just save Arthur's company. You saved our marriage too." "Your marriage?" "Yes," Arthur explained. "I was so stressed and obsessed with work that our relationship was suffering. Meeting you reminded me of what truly matters in life." Martha smiled. "Sometimes we need to stop and remember that in the end, only people matter. Everything else is a tool for taking care of people." The conversation went on late into the night, with plans for the future, stories from the past, and a great deal of emotion. In the following months, the project began to take shape. Martha divided her time between overseeing the implementation in the Emirates, developing similar projects in the Dust Bowl region, and taking care of her family. Harold, with the new treatment, began to regain movement he had lost. Harold Jr. stood out in his internship and was hired full-time at the company. Their daughter Grace decided to study social work, inspired by her mother. "Mom," Grace said one day, "I want to help people the way you are helping them." "Sweetheart, you can help people in any profession. What matters is never forgetting that we are here to take care of one another." A year after their first meeting, the project was already running in 4 different countries. Martha had become an internationally recognized consultant, but she still lived in the same house, drove the same old car, and maintained the simplicity that had always defined her. "Martha," Zayed said during one of his visits to the United States, "don't you ever think about changing your life with all this success?" "Zayed, my life has already changed. It changed because now I can help more people, but what makes me happy is still the same: family, friends, purpose. And don't you want to have nicer things and travel more?" "Zayed, my grandmother always said, whoever has everything they need has everything they want. I have everything I need." Arthur, who was present during the conversation, commented, "Martha, you are the richest person I know." "Why?" "Because you understand what is truly valuable in life." During the second visit to the Emirates, Martha brought Harold along. He had recovered enough to travel and was eager to see the project in person. "Martha," he said upon seeing the irrigation systems working, "I'm so proud of you." "Proud of what, Harold?" "For turning our suffering into help for other people." "Harold, we did it together. You gave me the strength to never give up. And you gave me a reason to fight. Martha, if I had to get sick all over again knowing it would lead to all this, I wouldn't hesitate." Martha embraced her husband, deeply moved. "Harold, you've always been my hero. Now you're a hero to so many more people." "What do you mean?" "Your story of not giving up despite the illness is inspiring many of the families we help." "Really?" "Really. Zayed always talks about the American man who supported his wife, even in the toughest moments. During that trip, they met Amira, an Emirati farmer who had become a community leader in the project. "Mrs. Martha," Amira said through the interpreter, "my life has changed since your project arrived here." "It's not my project, Amira. It's our project. But the idea of connecting tradition and technology was yours. The idea came from all of us together. I just helped organize the thoughts." Amira smiled. "You are very humble. My grandfather always said that the wisest people are always the most humble." "Your grandfather was wise, Amira, and it seems to me you've inherited that wisdom." During that conversation, Martha had a new idea. "Zayed, what if we created an exchange program between the women of the projects?" "What do you mean?" "Amira could come to the United States to meet the farmers of the Dust Bowl, and some American women could come here. A woman understands another woman in a special way." "Martha, that's a brilliant idea. And we could include the children, too. Imagine how rich it would be for a child from the American heartland to meet a child from the Arabian desert." Zayed was excited about the idea. "Martha, you never cease to surprise me, always thinking about how to connect people." "Zayed, my grandmother always said that the world becomes small when people truly get to know each other." This new initiative became one of the most successful parts of the project. Families from different countries began corresponding, sharing experiences, and even visiting one another. 2 years after the first meeting, Martha was invited to speak at an international conference on sustainable development. It was the first time she would speak to such a large and important audience. "Arthur," she said nervously, I don't know if I'm the right person to speak to all those doctors and specialists. Martha, you're exactly the right person. You have something they don't, real experience from someone who lived through the problems they study. But what if I say something wrong? Martha, you can't say the wrong thing when you speak from the heart. On the day of the presentation, Martha took the stage wearing a simple but elegant dress, carrying the scarf Zayed had given her on the first day of their partnership. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "my name is Martha Higgins. 2 years ago, I was a janitor. Today, I have the honor of speaking to you about something I've learned, that there is no sustainable development without love for people." The audience fell silent, captivated by the sincerity of her words. Martha told her story, the story of the project and the lessons she had learned. She spoke about the importance of listening before proposing solutions, of respecting traditions while embracing innovations, of seeing every person as part of a global family. "When I met Zayed and Arthur," she said, "they were trying to do business. But business that isn't based on genuine human relationships doesn't last. What lasts is when we understand that we are all children of the same earth and have a responsibility to one another." The audience rose to their feet in applause when she finished. After the presentation, several experts approached her with questions and praise. "Mrs. Martha," said a university professor, "you just summed up in 20 minutes what took us years to understand in academia." "Professor, you all understand the theories. I simply lived the practice. We need both. Would you be willing to teach classes at our university?" "Not classes, Professor, but conversations, those I'd be up for." That was one more door that opened. Martha began to be regularly invited to universities, not as a formal professor, but as a speaker on community development based on real experience. "Martha," said Arthur after one of these talks, "you're becoming an influential educator." "Arthur, I don't teach anything. I just share what I've learned." But that's exactly what education should be, sharing real experience. On one of these university visits, Martha met Dr. Margaret, a retired professor who had devoted her life to studying rural development. "Martha," said Dr. Margaret, "I'd like to propose a partnership." "What kind of partnership?" "How about we write a book together? Me with the theory, you with the practice." "Doctor, I barely finished grade school." "Martha, you have a PhD from life. That's worth more than any diploma." "But I don't know how to write books. You know how to tell stories. I know how to write academically. Together, we can create something unique." Martha accepted the proposal, and over the following months, they worked on a book that combined academic theory with real stories of community transformation. "Dr. Margaret," said Martha during one of the working sessions, "why did you want to work with me?" "Martha, in 40 years of academic career, I've never met anyone who understood the principles of human development so deeply without ever having formally studied it." "It's just that life teaches, Doctor." "Exactly, and that's what's missing in academia, more real life, less distant theory." The book, Wisdom of the Land, When Academia Meets Life, became a success, being translated into several languages and used in universities around the world. "Martha," said Zayed, when the book was released, "you've become an international author." "Zayed, this still feels like a dream to me. But it's real, Martha, and it's well-deserved." 3 years after their first meeting, the project had expanded to 12 countries, benefiting more than 5,000 families directly and countless others indirectly. Arthur, who had gone from a desperate businessman to a leader in sustainable development, created a foundation dedicated to replicating the model in other places. "Martha," he said during the foundation's launch, "I want you to be the executive director." "Arthur, I still don't even know how to use a computer properly." "Martha, you don't need to know computers. You know people, and people are what matter. But executive director, that's a lot of responsibility." "It's the responsibility you've already been carrying for 3 years. Now we're just making it official." Zayed, who was present at the ceremony, added, "Martha, accept it. The world needs more leaders like you." "Like me?" "Yes. Leaders who lead with their hearts, not just their heads. Martha accepted the position, but with conditions. I'll accept, but I want to keep my freedom to do things my own way. What way? Asked Arthur. Talking to people, learning their stories, understanding their needs before proposing anything. Martha, that's always been your way, and that's why it works. On the 4th anniversary of their first meeting, they organized a special gathering. Ahmed and his family were present, along with Arthur and Eleanor, Martha and her entire family, as well as representatives from all the communities benefited by the project. Friends, said Martha during dinner, 4 years ago, I walked into a room to empty a trash can. Today, we're here celebrating lives transformed on 4 continents. Mrs. Martha, said Amira, who had come from the United Arab Emirates, you didn't just change our lives, you changed the way we see the world. Amira, you all are the ones who changed my life. You taught me that it doesn't matter where we're born or what language we speak. We all want the same things: dignity, opportunity, and love for the people we care about. Ahmed stood up to make a toast. Martha, 4 years ago I thought I was looking for an equipment supplier. In truth, I was being led to meet a global family. Ahmed, Martha replied, 4 years ago I thought I was just doing my cleaning job. In truth, I was being prepared for the work of my life. Arthur added, and I thought I was making a business deal. In truth, I was learning what true success really means. During the celebration, Harold Jr., who was already a graduate leading his own projects, pulled his mother aside. Mum, can I confess something? Of course, my son. I always knew you were a special person, but it's only now that I understand just how much. Harold Jr., I'm not special. I just learned how to listen and how to care. Mom, that's exactly what makes you special. My son, every person has their own gifts. Mine is connecting people. Yours is creating technical solutions. Your father has the gift of perseverance. Grace has the gift of compassion. We're all special in some way. And what about Ahmed's gift? Ahmed has the gift of vision. He sees possibilities where others see problems. And Arthur? Arthur has the gift of transformation. He didn't just change himself, he inspires others to change too. That night, after everyone had gone home, Martha sat in her backyard, looking up at the stars. Harold, who now walked with the help of a cane, joined her. Martha, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking about my grandmother, Harold. What about her? She always said that God has plans bigger than ours. I wonder if she ever imagined her lessons would reach so far. Martha, your grandmother planted seeds of wisdom in you. Now you're planting those seeds all over the world. Harold, sometimes I get scared by so much responsibility. Why? Because so many people depend on our work now. I'm afraid of letting them down. Martha, you can only let them down if you stop being who you are. As long as you keep treating every person like family, everything will work out. How can you be so sure? Because in 40 years of marriage to you, I've watched you solve impossible problems with nothing but love and common sense. Martha took her husband's hand. Harold, thank you for always supporting me. Martha, thank you for showing me that true love is when we grow together, not when one person shrinks so the other can feel bigger. On the 5th anniversary of the project, Martha received an international honor for her work in sustainable development. The ceremony would be held in Geneva, Switzerland. Martha, said Arthur, you have to go. It's a worldwide recognition. Arthur, I don't know. So much pomp, so much protocol. Martha, you deserve this recognition. And more importantly, your presence there will show the world that wisdom has no social boundaries. Ahmed agreed. Martha, accept this honor. But not for yourself. For all the ordinary people who have wisdom to share but never get the chance to be heard. Martha eventually accepted, and the ceremony was deeply moving. When she stepped onto the stage to receive the honor, her first act was to dedicate the award. This honor is not mine. It's from my grandmother Mabel, who taught me that land and people are cared for with love. It's from my husband Harold, who showed me that strength is never falling. It's always getting back up. It's from my children, who taught me that educating means setting an example. It's from Ahmed, who taught me that borders are just imaginary lines when we share common purposes. It's from Roberto, who taught me that change is possible at any age. And it's from all the families who trusted us to help build a better world. The audience rose to their feet in a prolonged standing ovation. Backstage, after the ceremony, several world leaders approached Martha to speak with her. "Mrs. Martha," said a European minister, "I would like to invite you to advise our rural development programs." "Mr. Minister, I'm honored, but I need to better understand how you work before accepting anything." "What do you mean?" "I need to talk with the rural families in your country, understand their needs, learn about their traditions. I can't advise people I don't know." The minister was impressed by her response. "You're right. How about we organize a visit to our rural communities?" "Now we can talk," Martha smiled. This approach became standard for Martha. Before accepting any new project, she insisted on visiting the communities, talking with the families, and understanding the local culture. "Martha," said Dr. Margaret during one of their conversations, "you've created a unique methodology for community development." "What methodology?" "Listen first, judge never, connect always." "Doctor, that's not a methodology." "That's basic upbringing my grandmother gave me." "Well, it should be taught in every university in the world." "Maybe it should be taught at home first, Doctor." On the 6th anniversary of the project, the family decided to take a special trip, to return to Ruleville, Mississippi, Martha's hometown. "Martha," said Harold, "it's been 25 years since we've been back." "I know, Harold. I miss it so much." "What if we bought a little house there? We can afford it now, right?" "Harold, would you be willing to live there again?" "I would. Here in New York City we built our life, raised our children, but that's where our hearts belong." "And the medical treatment?" "Ahmed already offered to arrange everything I need anywhere in the world." "Then let's go, Harold. Let's go home." The trip back to Ruleville was emotional. The town had changed a lot, but the people still had the same warmth that Martha remembered. "Martha Higgins," shouted a woman on the street. "Girl, I heard you became somebody important." "Not important at all, Mrs. Gladys. I just got lucky to find good people to work with." "Girl, I saw you on television talking with all those foreigners. Your grandmother Mabel must be proud up in heaven." "I hope so, Mrs. Gladys." During the visit, Martha ran into many people from her childhood and discovered that several families were facing the same water shortage problems she was helping solve in other countries. "Martha," said her cousin Joe, "you understand these things now. Can't you help the folks around here too?" "I can, Joe. Actually, I was thinking exactly that." "Really? Really? How about we create a pilot project here in Ruleville?" "That would be amazing, cousin. Folks around here would be so happy." Martha talked with Roberto and Ahmed about the idea, and they were enthusiastic. "Martha," said Roberto, "it would be perfect. A project in your hometown, with all your personal history involved. And it would be a way for you to give back to the place that shaped you," added Ahmed. "It's not giving back, Ahmed. It's continuing. My grandmother planted, I'm harvesting and replanting." The project in Ruleville became one of the most successful of all. Martha knew every family, every story, every challenge. "You managed to mobilize the community in a way that surprised even your most experienced partners." "Martha," said Amira, who had come from the Emirates to learn about the American project, "you work with even more passion here." "That's because this is my roots, Amira. You work differently when you're taking care of your own family." "But don't you treat all of us like family too?" "I do. But here it's family by blood and by land. It has a special flavor." During the implementation of the project in Ruleville, Martha had the idea of creating a training center for multipliers of the model. "Arthur," she said, "what if we brought people from other projects to learn how to replicate our model here?" "Martha, that would be incredible. A center of excellence in community development." "Exactly, and it could be coordinated by people from the community itself who benefited from the project." "Martha, you never stop thinking of ways to empower people." "Arthur, empowerment isn't about giving power to someone. It's about helping a person discover the power they already have." The training center became a world reference. Community leaders from dozens of countries came to Ruleville to learn the Martha method, as it had been informally nicknamed. "Mrs. Martha," said a community leader from Peru. "Why do your projects succeed when so many others fail?" "My son, I don't know if it's a secret, but I can tell you what I've learned. A project only works if it's of the people, not for the people." "What do you mean?" "Well, if you show up in a community with a ready-made project and try to shove it down their throats, it doesn't work. If you show up, listen, learn, and build together with the people, it works." Sounds simple. It is simple, my son. What isn't simple is setting your ego aside and accepting that we don't know everything. On the 7th anniversary of their first meeting, they organized a special celebration in Ruleville. People came from all the countries where they had implemented projects. "Friends," said Martha during her opening speech, 7 years ago, I was a janitor who walked into a room at just the right moment. Today, you traveled across continents to be here in my hometown. This teaches me that there's no such thing as coincidence, only synchronicities we don't fully understand." Zayed, who had his whole family present, responded, "Martha, that wasn't just the right moment. It was our right moment. The universe conspires to connect people who have compatible purposes." Zayed, my grandmother, used to say something similar. She would say that birds from the same nest always find each other, even when flying far. During the celebration, there were cultural performances from all the participating countries. Arab children danced with American children. African farmers exchanged experiences with Asian farmers. "Martha," said a local teacher, "look at what you brought to our town. The whole world here in Ruleville." "Teacher, it wasn't me who brought them. It was the love we built together that attracted everyone." "What do you mean?" "When you work with true love, teacher, people feel it and want to be a part of it. Love is magnetic." That night, Martha and Harold walked to the cemetery to visit Grandma Mabel's grave. "Grandma," said Martha, kneeling before the tombstone, "I brought lots of people to meet you. They're people from all over the world learning the lessons you taught me." Harold placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. "Martha, I'm sure your grandmother is proud." "Harold, sometimes I feel her close by, you know, especially when I'm talking with the communities." "What do you mean?" "It's as if her words come out of my mouth, as if she's still teaching through me." "Martha, maybe that's exactly what's happening." On the 8th anniversary, Martha received a special invitation from the United Nations to present the development model at a General Assembly. "Martha," said Arthur, "this is the highest recognition there is." "Arthur, I get butterflies in my stomach just thinking about it." "Why?" "I'm going to speak to presidents, ministers, very important people." "Martha, you are very important too, perhaps the most important of them all." "What do you mean?" "Because you have something they don't. Credibility. When you speak, people believe you because they know you lived through what you're talking about." The presentation at the UN was historic. Martha spoke for 40 minutes about sustainable human development, using practical examples from all the communities she had helped. "World leaders," she said at one point, "you make laws and public policies. I take care of people. But deep down, we do the same work. We try to create a better world. The difference is that you work with numbers and I work with stories." The audience sat in absolute silence, absorbing every word. "Every family we help is not a statistic. It's a story of overcoming, of restored dignity, of dreams that became possible again. When we remember that, it becomes much easier to find solutions that truly work." At the end of the presentation, the UN Secretary-General made an exceptional remark. "Mrs. Martha, in 40 years of diplomatic career, I have never heard a presentation so moving and so practical at the same time. You reminded us of why we are here." After the presentation, several countries invited Martha to develop similar projects in their territories. "Martha," said Zayed, "you are becoming a world leader." "Zayed, I don't want to be a world leader. I want to keep being Martha, the one who connects people and solves problems. But that is exactly what makes you a world leader, Martha. You lead by being yourself." "Maybe so, Zayed. But promise me something. Anything. If I ever start thinking I'm too important, you all give me a wake-up call." "Martha, that will never happen." "Why?" "Because true humility isn't something you lose. It grows along with the person." On the 9th anniversary, Martha made an important decision to create an international foundation dedicated specifically to training community leaders using the model they had developed. "Arthur," she said, "I want the foundation to be independent from our companies." "Why?" "Because that way it can work with any government, any company, any organization, without conflicts of interest." "Martha, that makes sense. And who would run this foundation?" "I want it to be run collectively by representatives from all the communities we have helped." Zayed was impressed by the idea. "Martha, you are proposing a grassroots global democracy." "I'm proposing that the ones who know how to solve community problems are the communities themselves, when they have adequate support." "Martha, that is revolutionary." "It's not revolutionary, Zayed. It's ancestral wisdom applied to the modern world." The Martha Mabel Foundation, a name chosen to honor her grandmother, was launched with representatives from 15 countries. "Friends," said Martha at the launch, "this foundation is not mine. It is ours. Each one of you knows better than I do what works in your reality. My role is simply to help connect experiences and lessons." Amira, who had become the representative for the Middle East, commented, "Martha, you are creating a truly global family." "Amira, that's what family is. Each one contributes what they know. Everyone takes care of one another, and together we accomplish much more than we ever could alone." On the 10th anniversary of the first meeting, they organized a special celebration that lasted 3 days, with activities in New York City, the United Arab Emirates, and Ruleville. "Friends," said Martha in her opening speech, 10 years ago there were 3 of us in a room, a desperate businessman, a suspicious sheikh, and a curious janitor. Today we are thousands of people in dozens of countries, but we remain what we always were, a family trying to take care of our common home, which is this world." Arthur, who had been completely transformed over the years, gave a moving testimony. "Martha, I want to thank you publicly for saving not only my company but my soul. 10 years ago I was a man lost in greed. Today I am a man fulfilled in purpose." Zayed added, "And I was a rich but lonely man, doing empty business deals. Today I am a man prosperous in true relationships." "And I," said Martha, "was a woman resigned to a small life. Today I am a woman grateful for a life full of meaning." During the celebration, they announced that the model had expanded to 25 countries, directly benefiting more than 50,000 families. "Martha," said Harold Jr., who now coordinated the technical side of several projects, "do you realize the size of what we've built?" Harold Jr.: "We didn't build anything. We just removed obstacles so that people could build their own solutions." "Mom, that's too modest." "It's not modesty, my son, it's understanding. We never build anything alone. It's always the result of many people's work." On the night of the last day of the celebration, Martha gathered with her immediate family for an intimate conversation. "Folks," she said, "I need to talk to you about something." "What is it, Mom?" asked Grace, who now worked as a social worker on several foundation projects. "I'm thinking about gradually retiring from international activities." "Why, Mom?" asked Harold Jr., surprised. "Because there comes a time when we have to pass the baton. You, Amira, the other community leaders, you all already know how to do everything better than I do." Harold took his wife's hand. "Martha, are you sure about this?" "I am, Harold. And do you know what I want to do now?" "What?" "I want to dedicate myself more to our family, to our grandchildren, and to writing a book telling this whole story." "Mom," said Simon, the oldest son who had become a doctor inspired by his father's transformation, "what kind of book?" "A simple book, son, so that other ordinary people will know they can do extraordinary things when they find the right purpose." "Mom, that's really important," agreed Grace. "How many people don't know they have transformative potential?" "Exactly, Grace. I want other Marthas around the world to know that they don't need anyone's permission to help people." The end. Dear listener, now tell us, what did you think of this heartwarming story? Martha truly managed to transform not only businesses, but entire lives through her wisdom and simplicity. Leave your comment telling us which part touched you the most and whether you know someone like Martha. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one.